One good opening strat can completely change the outcome of a game in Halo, and what we're about to watch is one of the fastest games of Halo I've ever seen in my life. This game has what I would call a perfect starting strat, and I had the pleasure of casting it last weekend. So today we're going to watch this game and then come back and break it down.
It's going to be Legends versus, I believe their team name is CSG this week, Super CC's team, and it's going to be CGF on Truth, game one of the series. It is a best of three. And these two teams, like I said, whenever they play each other, I feel like it's always a bloodbath, and the outcome's definitely not determined before the series starts. APMH starts off with a double kill, and that's going to be 3 early dead for Legends right now. And how are they going to be able to deal with the early map control that CSG has earned?
Now, I'm going to be kind of late to say anything about this, but I love everything I've seen from Super CC so far. His starting strat was kind of unorthodox. He flew over to the bubble with a super jump and then had this awkward angle to get a kill, and then he landed, he got like a momentum bounce off of the ramp into bottom mid, and now there you go. He gets himself a nice flag pull, and it looks like a second capture as well. Already, we've had 2 caps on the board in literally less than a minute in the game, no doubt due to Super CC, but also his team that's just performing exceptionally well right now. We might have a game over in a faster time than we had on Kali.
Yeah, wow, 2-0 in the first minute of this game, and that's an incredible start for Team CC. And this is similar to that Coliseum fight that you just touched on that we saw this team play early. So when this team gets off hot and it gets off to a rolling start, they really run with it. And what I thought was going to be a bloodbath is actually just a slaughter of CSG on Legend, and there, I believe, is going to be the game very quickly as the 3rd cap goes in. And I'm not even sure if Legends got to kill that game because there was multiple players. Every single player for Legends got 1 kill.
Red 6. I don't know if you see that time up on the top there. That's 1 minute 46 for a game of flag. That's 3 caps in 1 minute 46 seconds. That's hard to do, almost hard to do if you have no enemy team to kill. Like it'd be really interesting if possible. I know this replay probably won't show it. It would have been nice if we could somehow back up and find the POV of the guy who flew in and got the first flag, because I didn't even see it happen. That's a great idea, Shyway. Why don't we do that? We're going to take a look at this entire starting strat from all 8 POVs and find out what actually happened. And the interesting thing about this is that both teams go for basically the same strategy. There's a variety of ways to split your team's resources for an opening strat in Truth CTF, but generally speaking, the best, most balanced opening strat is going to look something like this. You would send 2 guys out Pink Street, 1 player in the center, and then 1 player out to Car. Now, the reason why you do this and why you stack more players on Pink is obviously because the camo spawns on Pink side, and this is always going to be a priority. So one of these 2 players, their objective would be to either grab or burn the camo, while the other can serve as support, but also he's going to want to make sure he makes his way to P2 as well, because this is a very powerful part of the map to control. The center lane in the window here, this player can choose to stay in the window and either cross an opponent on the opposite window or the players in the P street, and he has the option to go directly to top mid, which is of course a very powerful but very vulnerable position of the map to control. Then you have the guy on Car side, and the Car side, well, it is kind of the least important lane to stack. It's nice to have a guy here because if your team doesn't send a guy through Car side and they decide to send 3 through Pink, let's say, instead, then this player has free reign to either go contribute to helping top mid or go straight into your opponent's flag. So, of course, something you probably noticed by now is that both teams are doing the same thing. You've got 2 guys flying out the Pink Street. You got 1 window, you got 1 car. The exact same strategy on both sides. 2 Pink, 1 window, 1 car. But the interesting thing about how this ends up playing out is it's a perfect example of one team going for a very efficient, very well-planned version of this strategy, and the other team going for a less efficient, less planned out version of the same strategy. You'll see what I mean. Let's jump into blue team's POVs first and see how this happened. Let's start with Legend, who goes Car side. I'm going to turn off the outlines as well, just so you can see what they see, but he'll sprint, thrust slide out car door, and then he tosses a nade, and while he does that, he actually spots the feet of an opposing player flying across this car angle. Now, it's hard to tell where this player is going, so what he does is, as he jumps up to the arm here, he'll throw a second nade. Of course, the objective with these nades is to get them to bounce and blow up at the base of this ramp, so whether or not that player goes car 1 or car 2, it's going to hurt him. though that player doesn't go to that angle. Something you'll notice when I turn on the outline is he's hiding at the back of the car bubble. Now, Legend doesn't know this, and he's going to wait here for a second, check car 1, check car 2, doesn't see anything, finally sees the guy, puts shots in, and then tries to chase him down, and by the time he gets to the angle, gets double-teamed and melted. Next, we're going to take a look at Sika, who goes for the middle lane, the window. So he'll sprint slide forward, looks at the window, but then changes his mind, and he's going to look away to Pink Street, takes a shot, gets popped out of scope, and by the time he scopes back in, he doesn't really have a good angle to contribute much damage here. So realizing that he hasn't done much, or he hasn't been effective, he decides to jump up to the window, go straight to top mid, but he's lost Shady, and he's lost Precisionite on his kill feed. So he's down 2 players, and he's flying into the center of the map with no perimeter. So he's in trouble here. He gets crossed up from the back and from the front at the same time he goes down. Now let's look at the players who go pink side. We'll start with Precisionite, who's going to sprint, thrust slide out the P door, and while he's flying through the air, he's going to pre-aim his reticle at the opposite base window so he can land shots on this opponent as he flies by, then suddenly takes nade damage, moves up to P2, is surprised by this opponent directly in front of him, and throws a bit of a panic nade, gets overwhelmed, and then taken down. And lastly, we've got Shady, who does the same thing. He'll sprint, thrust slide out the same door, and while he flies through the air, it looks like he thinks about shooting players on the opposite side of pink, but then changes his mind, decides he's going to go straight to P2. But as he does this, he just gets melted by gunfire and nades and dies instantly. Overall, this team had a well-balanced opening strat. They sent 2 pink, they sent 1 window, and 1 out car, but when it came down to execution, they were completely wiped out without getting a single kill. So what the heck happened? Let's find out. Let's check out the other team. Just like with blue side, we'll start by watching the player that runs car, and that's Super CC. Now, this is the run that was shown live, and during my commentary, I found this run to be very interesting. It's very creative and uncommon. You don't usually see players do this as a car side strat. He's going to start by doing what I call a super jump to get up to the back of the bubble here immediately. A little note about this jump, in case you want to try it yourself, is he's waiting till specifically this point before he goes for the jump. And that's because the first half is a thrust slide, and you need a flat surface for a thrust slide to work. If you don't have a flat surface, your feet might leave the floor during the thrust, and that'll ruin the jump. So he waits till here, goes for a thrust slide, and then jump, stabilizes, and holds crouch to clamber up to this bubble. Once he gets here, he crouches and then tucks his back into this back corner so he can block the car 2 angle. I found this to be really cool because it cuts out the car 2 angle. It also cuts out where players would typically pre-nade. That pre-nade location is just useless if he's hiding here. And on top of this, like being a nice passive defensive play, he also has an angle up on top mid as well. So he can choose where he wants to contribute, where he wants to fight, depending on how this starting strat goes. So he waits here, decides to then peek out, and doesn't see anybody. This is the moment that Legend drops down, and then spots a guy top mid, jump stabilizes, shoots him, but remembers in the back of his mind that there's a player on car side, so he knows his escape already. He thrusts forward. The instant that he hits the ground, he jumps, and he gets a momentum boost forward, and this is the reason why I kind of freaked out when I was commentating it, because I thought that was cool. Not sure if it was on purpose, but it was well executed. So he lands 3 crucial shots into this player while stabilizing. That's a big assist right there, and then he does like a Halo 3 style slope jump where he thrusts forward and then holds crouch in midair, and the instant he hits the bottom of this ramp, he's going to release crouch and jump, and it shoots him into bottom mid and then gives him this great angle to take this fight with Legend, puts shots into him, gets help from top mid, that player is dead. So essentially his starting strat resulted in 2 big assists, and now he's moving to top mid. Now let's look at the player in the middle lane, the window, and that's Slinky. Now, Slinky's run is very similar to Sika's on the opposite side, but there's a couple crucial differences that really impacted this opening strat. And the first one I'm not really sure is a thing, or if this is on purpose or what, but he starts the game by sitting in crouch and just waiting here in crouch. And I think this is because he knows he's going to go for the window, and he's waiting and just watching the enemy team and seeing how they split, seeing who goes pink, whether or not there's a player going window. I think he's just planning his attack, which I find really interesting. Once he kind of figures it out, he decides to sprint out left, and of course he's sprinting and cutting his angle with window, and then he's going to time a slide in for the challenge. And something I love about this play is it's actually decisive. He's not second guessing himself. He knows he wants to shoot that window first, and that's exactly what he does. He gets a shot right into window, backs that player down, and once he's confirmed that, he challenges P Street, gets a shot into P Street as well. So he's contributed on both sides. Next thing he does is plays patient. He just waits. He's waiting on a few things here. The results of the opening strat so far, whether or not his teammates are winning their gunfights, paying attention to things like the kill feed, or listening to callouts while also scanning top mid or car, and seeing if he can contribute from this spot. And also by standing here, he's kind of baiting his opponent in the other window to fly forward to top mid before him. And that's exactly what happens. While waiting here, he notices his teammates win their fights. He sees the guy top mid and decides to sprint, jump, thrust, and stabilize, which will give him enough momentum to clear this gap and clamber top mid. 3 players are dead by the time he gets here. He knows there's 1 left, and that 1 guy is on car, turns around, and they just light this guy up and take him down, and that's 4 dead. So great opening strat. And honestly, I think he could have ran and jumped to top mid earlier, and he still would have got away with it, and that's because his teammates won their fights in pink. But it was smart for him to recognize that top mid is vulnerable, and by standing there, he can get a lot of information rather than just diving there immediately. Now let's look at the players who went pink side. We'll start with APMH, and watch how fast he makes this run. He'll sprint, thrust slide out the door, and then throws this god nade that blows up, takes out Shady, wastes no time flying through P2, getting the double on Precisionite, looks to top mid, manages to land a triple on Sika, and then goes straight into the base, grabs flag, and takes it back out pink side. He's already making the run. It's very clear that APMH knows exactly what he wants to do off this opening strat, and that's to get to P2 as fast as possible. Now, Precisionite on the other team in this position, what he did was try to pre-aim the window and fire shots into the window as he was flying by. APMH seems to have no interest in this whatsoever. He's just trying to get to P2. But while he does that, he throws this beautiful nade that you should take notes on. This nade flies through the air, lands on the floor here in P1, and then bounces and blows up in the street. This is just a beautiful nade to take out Shabby, and then he wastes no time while that happens. He hits the floor, sprints the instant he hits the floor, and the beauty of that is he's gotten to this location so quickly that he's given himself a timing advantage and surprises Precisionite by doing so, giving him the easy double. He hasn't even burned his thrust yet as well, and he knows these 2 players are dead in street, so he has the awareness to look up to top mid, and he can use that thrust to fly by, land shots at the same time, get that triple, and now he's in blue base. Now he has the option for a cap, and he knows that the spawns are in carbine side, and it's something we'll talk about in a second, but this nade is great as well. He throws a ground bounce nade. Of course, bouncing the nade on the floor is going to set that explosion timer off earlier, and you'll see this opponent is forced to thrust away from it to avoid that explosion. So that worked out really well in backing down that player and giving him an option to go up to pink and start to run this flag. All right, last player, and that's Firebird. Now, Firebird's going to go out pink like his teammate, but this run's a little different. Instead of going for a thrust slide, he's going to go for something a little less explosive. He'll do a sprint jump thrust and then land on the street and sit here and crouch and hold this angle hard. His objective is to land shots into anyone who flies by that street. That's exactly what he does. He gets 3 shots in, which is perfect because it knocks the shields off that player, and the nade does the trick in finishing him off. Also note that he's very aware of his positioning here as well. He starts by taking a pretty confident angle out forward where he can land these opening shots, but he's aware of the threat of window on his left-hand side as well, and you know this because he's backing up carefully as he hits those shots, just narrowly avoiding that angle that that player has in window, which works out perfectly. The moment that player dies, he then flies forward, he can grab camo, he's got his teammate in front of him helping him out and just getting all these slays, so works perfectly getting into this base. He then makes the smart decision to go under base instead of the top of it and catches a player on spawn. But basically, from what I can tell looking at all 8 of these POVs, is it's very clear that one team has a well planned out, well coordinated version of that opening strat, and the other team doesn't. The other team didn't quite figure that out. And I think what happened here is all 4 of these players on blue are very talented, don't get me wrong, but I feel like they just kind of came together for the event and decided, okay, you go window, I'm gonna go pink, you go car, and they just said that beforehand. Where this team, I feel like they talked about it. I feel like they have a set plan for each one of those plays, and it's just so obvious in how it plays out. You get the 2 players who go pink. They decide they're going to go pink, but neither of these players have a specific objective going pink. So one guy flies in, he puts a couple shots into window, the other guy doesn't put any shots in. They both end up in the exact same spot on the street, and they're not really supporting each other because they don't really know who's going to go for camo first, who's going to go for P2 first. It hasn't been discussed, right? You got the one guy on top mid, and that top mid guy is going to try to help out for window, but he doesn't know that he should shoot the window guy first or whether he should shoot the window guy or the pink guy first. He hasn't really figured that out, so he comes in kind of indecisive, and he's late to both challenges. Now, Legend didn't really do anything wrong with his strategy here going to Car. He went for a general Car strategy, but this player, Super CC, had his Car strategy down pat. He knew exactly what he wanted to do here, and it seemed like his entire team coordinated around these decisions. Like, it almost seemed like Red Team very purposely went for a passive coordinated play on the left-hand side of the map, like on Car and top and mid here, versus this hyper-aggressive side on Pink, which I feel like all of this aggression on Pink really encouraged that player in window to pay more attention to what was going on here and kind of encouraged him to push forward to top mid. And then you think of this strategy on red with CC, who's sitting up in bubble. CC has an angle on top mid, and so does that player in window. So I feel like their strategy is kind of made to bait somebody into coming to top mid so they can melt that player quickly, while they have these players who on Pink side know exactly what they want to do to grab camo and to get through Pink and to conquer. So it's wild when you look at a team that has a coordinated opening strat and a team that doesn't, and how it plays out, and you just get this flawless result, 4 dead, camo grab, and a cap on the board. Now, a coordinated opening strat into a flag cap is a great way to start a game, but if you want to win a game, you have to maintain that control. And Red Team does a great job of this by forcing a car bubble spawn and cycling out control of top mid. But today, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to end the discussion here. The key takeaway here is that it's not good enough to just send your teammates out to their designated lanes. Every teammate here should have a set role. They should know exactly what they're doing on their strat. And if you can plan that in advance, you'll see much more success with your team in games. For the record, the original objective for this video was to break down the entire game. So I do have extra footage where I broke down the spawn system in Truth CTF and talked about how that team maintained control and eventually won the game. It's just the total video was way over 20 minutes long, and I felt like a better sweet spot was to leave it here for now. So let me know if you want to see the rest of the breakdown on this game. I was thinking I could just maybe clip together the extra stuff and make a separate video, try to focus it on the spawn system, because the comments on my last video, a lot of people wanted me to talk about spawns in Halo 5. So that's something we can touch on as well. If you're curious to know where this footage came from, this is a weekly Esports Arena tournament, and I cast it every weekend on Sundays. All the info is in the description below. You should definitely come check it out. It's some of the highest level Halo 5 you're going to find anywhere at this moment. And that's everything. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. All the support you guys have been giving me is amazing. So let's keep that up. Let's keep it going. I've got similar videos on my right as well. You can check those out if you want more Halo 5, Halo Infinite, Halo 3 videos. Plenty of content to check out. Until then, I'll see you next time.